So I was out of the country for 3 weeks or so and was largely offline, which is probably a healthy thing I should do more of. When I returned, a trending city in Virginia caught my eye. I think even before I returned, I might have been like the airport in London, and Charlottesville was trending, maybe literally trending on Twitter. Um, and I was like, "Oh, why is it the anniversary? Did was there another horrific moment of tension in Charlottesville?" Which is, by the way, as a side note, parenthetically, it's sort of a bummer for Charlottesville that that is like what their burg is now associated with for our entire generation. Um, why is this trending? The reason it was trending is the popularity of people invoking Charlottesville as a precedent for what we've seen unfold over the past, I don't know, at this point, what, 6, 7, 8 months of Gaza protests. I would just call them Gaza protests. I think people either call them anti-Israel or pro-Palestine protests in that sort of biased way that people use anti-choice, pro-life, pro-abortion, anti-abortion, that sort of sense. I'm just calling them Gaza protests because that's to me, they relate to what I call the Gaza War. And I just think that's the easiest, like trying to find some neutral ground to have these conversations about the Gaza protests.
To not get stuck on the title of the thing.
Yeah. Although, listen, titles are important and it takes a long time, but also let's find one that's in betweenish that we all go, okay, well, it is that. Do we all agree that it's that? Cool, great. It does involve Gaza. Yes. Okay, good. No, not good, actually. War's terrible. But this led me to ask the question, because this is what people seem to be positing, that these Gaza protests are Charlottesville all over again, writ large, spread across the country, and now happening at college campuses. And people were largely irritated that it wasn't being covered as such. And then plenty of people were angry that it was being covered as such. So it was repeated often enough that I had to be like, I was just saying this to you offline, Andy, that when I see something repeated often enough, I start to think, all right, so that's probably bullshit. And so I started digging into it, and I didn't come to any great conclusion, which is why I was like, oh, this would be a good episode topic, because people are inflamed about this, are very angry it's being compared, are very angry it's not being compared. But there are great comparisons, and I think lessons we can learn from recent history. The question of the day being, are the Gaza protests Charlottesville 2.0? I'm Brendan McNamara, and this is Totally Classic, where I talk to one of the people I love most in the world about things that tend to, what's the word? Spark hate and division. And I do believe in a world where we can and should talk about everything, a joke about everything even, which Andy probably wouldn't share that second thing, but that's how I do it. But yeah, and the person I love so much, Andy, who I just referenced, is here with me now.
That's me, the one and only Andy Swindler. A name you can trust.
I mean, someday you're going to run for office on that, and you just might squeak through. So I especially want to talk to you about this, Andy, because you are, I think, much more intimately involved and even, I would say, ideologically associated with the Gaza protests, where I'm much more of a probably annoying to everyone who I talk to about this, kind of a neutral party, meaning like this is a war. They obviously, both Palestine and Israel kind of wanted it, obviously, and here they're in it now, and it sucks and it's horrible and I hate it and it's gross and war is disgusting. So as much as these protests were anti-war protests, I was full on like, right on. When I started seeing the protesters online being censored, I was also like, this is good. So you could, because it'll make everyone realize this is what they do to anybody. This is what social media companies, under the direct behest of the government, as we now know is explicitly so, this is what social media companies censor, which is don't speak against whatever narrative those in charge of our government don't want you to speak about. So this was lockdowns, flipping ivermectin, vaccines. I've even had things censored related to abortion. You don't talk about these things in ways we don't want you to talk about these things. Gender identity. And now, all of a sudden, people who would have been on the opposite side of a lot of those conversations are being censored for their position on this. So then the great thing is they realize it helps hopefully everyone shed this idea of, oh, well, you had to censor those people for like public reasons of public safety and misinformation. That's not at all how it's operating. It's never how it's been operating because it's happening now to you. So same side, bros. But right now, I got to tell you, this is one of the least, it continues to be one of the least, hey, same side bros times I've ever witnessed.
But we live in a free country.
I mean, relatively speaking, in terms of the panoply of countries on the world, we're probably in the top 30%, 25, maybe 30% in terms of freedom. And in terms of history of the world, in terms of the broadness of freedom that our overall populace throughout multiple classes, we're doing pretty well. But is it a free country? I mean, that's an extensive question for another episode.
Well, that was a callback. I think we did that episode.
Yeah, at least free speech, right?
Oh, that's right. Free speech.
Our speech certainly is not free, or at least it says under assault explicitly by our government, which the Constitution seeks to protect us from, more so than any other time in I think certainly our lifetime. And I'll be 50 somewhere in the next 5 years, so
yeah,
it's a long time.
I appreciate the question.
Yeah.
Are the Gaza protests Charlottesville 2.0? I had to refresh my memory of Charlottesville. I can't even say it right. Charlottesville, Virginia, in the United States for all our international listeners. And find myself not really remembering a whole lot about it. So I think that my contributions today are going to be a bit more on the current theme, particularly, and I did want to find a way to talk about this anyway, some of the student protests.
Yeah.
I visited 3 encampments, including our alma mater. I can share a couple of anecdotal pieces about that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm neutral. I'm pro-Palestine for a couple of reasons. One is I just know more people there for visiting there, so I think that's just a proximity bias, maybe. And I have friends in Israel, so I'm, being a bit more pro-Palestine doesn't lead me to being anti-Israel.
Yeah.
Other than one thing we certainly agree on is we hate war, and it's disgusting. And so if one way I think people are, even if they're sort of just getting on board for whatever reason, just purely looking at casualty counts, is one reason to sort of drift towards, hey, let's have a ceasefire. Hey, let's stop killing people in Gaza, because that is what's happening right now.
Yeah.
We're not dismissing what happened on October 7th or all the
or it's continually happening. I mean, Palestine's still fighting as well. They're just they don't kill as many people. Although the ratio, as we noticed, the UN just revised counts. They're about 30% lower than the UN's accounts or whatever, are 30% lower than the Gaza Ministry of Health accounts were in terms of civilian casualties. And the casualty rates, because we had run this, Andy and I, we're like, at least, ran it and like, hey, I took 20, 30 minutes to like run all the numbers and find all the numbers and look at the casualty ratio, the civilian casualty ratio. And it was like Israel was like 4 times more substantial, but with a 30% reduction and more, we know more about the casualties now. The casualties for both sides are within the realm of what is typical for war, and actually not terribly dissimilar in terms of how many civilians have been killed versus combatants by both sides, by both Palestine and Israel. So they're both continuing to fight.
Right. So it brings us back to a war is awful.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Stance.
I don't. This seems like this is the stupidest way to solve these things.
Yeah.
But also in that, listen, I also understand. We both understand, having looked at it, in some ways, it's at least as much as I understand it, maybe you can help me with this because I've still been trying to solve this. My best estimate as to the last time we talked 2 episodes about Israel-Palestine conflict, I was like, who are Palestinians really? Right? Because it almost seems like, is this a real distinction, or is this a distinction made to foster this sort of conflict? As best as I can understand it in simplest terms, they are Arab Levantines. And then Israel is functionally like Jewish Levantines. And that's the best real division I can do. Because we know the Palestinian distinction is really just a Roman, like was a Roman invention. We talked about that in our previous episodes to kind of take it away. It was called Judea before that. And the Romans were like, let's call it something else because F you Jews, we don't like you. So even the name Palestine is kind of weird, right? So I was like, what in the heck are we talking about? So that's my best understanding. So then that means the Arabs didn't come in until about 1,000 years after the Jews were there. So, but that means in like 500 or 600, 700 BC, AD or BCE CE, whatever all those distinctions are. And then nowadays in the post-zero era, so it's a conflict that's been going on for whatever, 1,000 plus years. Meaning, as much as I hate war, I also understand why it's happening and its inevitability. But that makes it even more tragic.
Yeah, and for what I get of feeds, they're just tremendously polarized, and we talk about bias all the time, and I think you absorb more of it than I do. Just generally, like looking at more of what's out there, and yeah, at this point, I mean, it's just beyond predictable. Like,
yes,
like what which people are going to say which things and what side they're going to be on, and how they're going to cherry pick history, and that's in fact there was a video, I don't know, which seemed fine. It was like the history of Palestine, and it just said something like, and Palestinians have been in this region since recorded history, and I was like, well, I mean, is that
it's just no, it's a lie.
What do you mean by
that would just be a lie. I mean, that's like saying like Israel has been there since recorded history began. It's not true. They came in like what it was like almost like 1,000 years but BC, but they weren't there. There were other people there first.
Yeah.
And a lot of just like
in this show is recognizing my woke bias.
Yeah.
And recognizing, I don't know, sometimes I think that's useful and compassionate, and other times it's not helpful because my stance is anytime we're like inventing realities to justify an opinion, I think that's one thing we share. It's like that's not helpful.
No, or at least it's a red flag. It's a red flag. Something's going on. Something else is going on here.
Yeah.
Something else is being created.
This is sort of random, but one of those on more of the social justice side, pro-Palestine side, was they were referring to it, I think, spelled Falesteen.
Oh yeah. And
I was like, I looked it up, and there's scarce references to that, and I was just like, well, this is already an English translation. Like, what are you?
Yeah.
Is this the right way to spell it in English? I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So. Yeah. Well, it's I've never seen it spelled that way, but I've seen it. It's referred to as such by some other Arab countries, as essentially as like a Philistius. It sounds like Philistine. Although
that's your argument, right? That's where wasn't that what the Romans?
I believe so. Yeah. And then they were known as like, essentially they were just calling it after listen, we don't know. They didn't document their rationale as to why they did it, other than it was renamed right after a Jewish rebellion. So there are contextual clues that's why it was renamed. And then it was renamed something similar to, at least, like Israel's historic enemy. So it was like, again, so in terms of like, is this just a created conflict? I mean, it is. It's a created conflict based on a previous actual conflict. But as far as we know, but as we also know genetically, Palestinians and Jews both have genetic material at this point related to this region, germane to this region. So that puts us in that. Yeah.
They're cousins, right? Family feud.
Yep. This is definitely, I mean, as all wars are, they're all family feuds.
So help us connect this to Charlottesville.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So the claim was Charlottesville, here's an event. People are there for various and sundry reasons. As everyone remembers, Donald Trump saying good people on both sides, which he specifically said that he wasn't talking about the white supremacists there, the anti-Semites there, the Nazis there. But there were people there for all sorts of reasons. Who gets the headlines? The rowdiest, wackiest people. This is true for every protest, probably in the history of protests. We saw this with BLM, right? That it was like, oh, it's a bunch of some coverage. It was a bunch of Antifa riots, right? It was also, and then some people like mostly peaceful. You're like, oh, that's contextually accurate, but let's not ignore the fact that they, dozens and dozens of people dead, trillions of dollars of damage. Same thing with January 6th. 1% of the people who attended the event went to the Capitol. And then that's all anyone talks about, right? So this is this very like, what is it? I don't know, it's like emergency bias or like the whatever the outlier bias. And so this is what people are now arguing about these protests. There are certainly anti-Semites involved. There are certainly anti-Semites who are organizers, notably that dude at Columbia, who was full on like all Zionists don't deserve to live. Okay. Contextually, that would almost be like if anyone thinks that Native Americans should be given their land back. Those people don't deserve to live, right? It doesn't make any sense to say that. So there's obviously there's something beyond there. There's been anti-Semitic graffiti chants and then arguable chants, right? There's anti-Semites at these events somewhere, right? Not all of them, but some of them. That's being highlighted, of course. The president keeps talking about like anti-Semitism, and Jews are the most Jews are the most potently marginalized religious group, at least in the United States, meaning they are the most victimized. In terms of hate crime statistics, religious hate crime statistics, Jews are the most likely to be abused for their religious views. Now, the problem is with anti-Semitism, we're talking about religious Jews and non-religious Jews, so that gets confusing. I lay that in as a relevant thing, but it doesn't obviously holistically apply, especially because Zionism as a concept was actually largely forwarded by non-religious Jews. So is it, to me, the immediate answer already is, are the Gaza protests Charlottesville 2.0? Yes. Are they legitimate concerns and people upset about a bunch of different things, some of which are legitimate, some of which don't make any sense? And then there are also anti-Semites there? Yes, absolutely. Now, what this should helpfully do, though, is can we stop painting things with an entire brush as though January 6th was just about storming the Capitol? That's ridiculous. 1% of people did that. That doesn't make any logical sense. There are some anti-Semites in an anti-war movement. Does that mean the entire movement? That's all that happened there? Of course not. That's a ridiculous, reductive thing. And no one can say, oh gosh, we just don't have time to be like honest about these things. It's false. Let's look at Netflix's streaming numbers. We all have plenty of time, guys.
Oh my God, I was looking through my account and maybe it was the watch again or something. And these are entire series I've devoted my life to. I'm like, oh gosh, that was a lot of time.
Yeah, anyhow, we spent a lot of time. So yeah, you've been out there. My question then is to say, okay, well, in that Charlottesville comparison, which I think is helpful, half unhelpful, whatever, the utility of this comparison. How are they similar and how are they different in terms of, to me, the similarities is there are anti-Semites involved in both movements. There are people with ill intent and people with positive intent involved in both sort of moments or protests or whatever. And then how are they different is, again, besides the, let me say, what's the word? Besides the obvious, meaning the things that they're getting upset about are extremely different. I'm curious specifically, and this is one of the reasons I got real riled up about this. I saw some of the same people who were real riled up about January 6th being like a white supremacist thing. Again, even though the percentage of the explicit white supremacist language involved in January 6th was none. There's explicit anti-Semitic speech involved in these protests. So, but I'm seeing some of the same people who called January 6th a white supremacist thing because of like 2 degrees removed from like the Proud Boys, whatever. It's like, oh, but they were at an event. They provided security at this white supremacist event. Okay, so these people were involved who elsewhere did this thing for these other people. Whether or not they agree with them or not, we don't know. So because of those connections, those tethers and connections of like, oh, this is associated with people proclaimed it that. And some of those same people I know in person and even like virtual friends and real friends who are also virtual friends are furious that these Gaza protests are being painted with a similar brush. When I see hypocrisy, I get super excited. So, have you seen that? Have you have not even seen anyone being upset about how these protests are covered? In which case, I'm the only one seeing the umbrage.
Well, I see people being upset in every direction, certainly.
Yeah.
I've not seen any connection to Charlottesville, but that's like I'm not consuming nearly the amount of media you are.
Yeah. But even just, I
Um,
mean, really, as a stand-in for like, this is an anti-Sem.
yes,
That was it.
yeah.
That was an anti-Semitic day. Everyone there was a Nazi, right? And likewise, everyone involved in these protests hates Israel, hates Jews. Like,
Oh
has
yeah, there's
you know,
one. I think I passed on a couple things from. Oh my God, I'm forgetting her name. But I don't know. She's got like a million followers, like a plastic surgeon in LA, I think.
yeah,
Very outspoken, pro-Israel, and I don't know. Like you, I mean, I want to not just live in my bubble. I want to actually listen to I don't know as many points of view as I can, and
yeah,
especially extreme ones. And she's a good example of somebody I'm like, well, I know exactly what she's going to say, pretty much, or at least the
yeah,
tone of it. I mean, she's sort
yeah,
of pulling from
yeah,
different things. So yeah, I mean, if I tune into like some extreme, you know, bias declared feed, I mean, look, in some ways, it's almost like it provides me a sense of stability and control when I feel like somebody's that reliable, even if
sure, sure, yeah,
I don't agree. So yeah, you tune into things like that, and it's all of this, literally the entire thing is just based on anti-Semitism from top to bottom.
right,
And I'm like, okay, well, I don't. So I don't believe that, and that's extreme.
yeah,
Um, Somewhere in the middle is I'll just have an anecdote. So I visited a
yeah,
few college encampments. Very curious about that. Happened to be tipped off for the DePaul University one the day it happened, the day
mm,
it started. I think they're still going a couple weeks in, and um, in fact, I think I maybe was there the last time we recorded because I was there a little past my bedtime. My observation of it was that it was very peaceful.
yeah,
I mean, I'm standing around having conversations, people are eating snacks. It's funny. I remember one time in like a DEI, like anti-racist training, there was somebody who had lived through really severe childhood trauma and abuse, and we talk about safe spaces, and people argue about that because people fucking argue about everything, and she was just like we were talking about this training she was at, and people were talking about safe spaces, and it was like, but there's cookies. Like we're sitting around eating cookies.
yeah,
Nobody's like hitting each other. Like what do you so this
yeah,
idea of like what is safety? And I don't mean to make light of any of that, but it is a worthwhile question of just perspective of like what is safety and what is peace. And I'm like, okay, these students are pretty well organized. They're encampment and they're breaking rules probably to put up tents. But that's, I mean, I don't know. I think personally that's what college is about, part of it at least. So
yeah,
uh, I'm having conversations with one of the organizers, just doing our thing. So I take a couple of pictures before they politely said, please don't take photos. I said, that's fine. But one of the photos I took, I do try to avoid people in my photos. So I took a photo of the posters out front. It's on my Instagram,
yeah,
a Swindler. Um, and it's a ton of posters. I mean, it's like,
yeah,
I mean, I don't know, it's a lot. That's like a whole like fence full of
yeah,
posters.
filled, yeah,
And then the only comment I've gotten, I got a bunch of likes, it's fine. But then the only comment I got says, you know what river to the sea means, right?
yeah,
And I'm like, yeah, I do. Why do you ask?
yeah,
I've not heard anything back.
yeah,
So, even with my pro-Palestinian bias, I understand that phrase, maybe absolutely, but at least probably usually means, hey, Palestine is going to take back their land. And guess what taking back the land means at this stage
yeah,
in history?
yeah,
reversing the tide and pushing all the Jews out. So I do
Yep.
understand that, but I'm like, it's a good example, I think, because it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like
Yep.
there's all these posters they all say different stuff.
Yep.
You pick out the one that doesn't even say anything like it doesn't. It's not even explicitly anti-Semitic. So it sort of requires a layer of interpretation,
Yes.
even if we would all agree, like, well, that's what that means. Um,
Yes.
and that's the only comment I get. So I feel like, yes,
Yes.
my anecdotal experience posting like one thing and seeing one
Yep.
comment is
Yep.
somebody cherry picking the piece.
Yeah. That is definitely, well, it's funny because that is, I think that is how human brains work. Meaning, like if you look at a field of green and there's one yellow flower and you take a picture of it, our brain goes, oh, that picture of the field with the yellow flower is amazing. It's one seven thousandth of that photo I took. But yes, that's how our brains kind of function.
Yeah.
But it does, which is, listen, which is good because it's useful, but it's bad when that becomes, when you're just like, remember that picture you posted of the yellow flower? When you're like, well, wait a second. There's a picture of an entire field, right? This is, yeah, no, this is certainly kind of what happens. It's, or a very akin, you look at the field of people at on January 6th, right? And there's a Confederate flag. There's a field of people.
Yeah.
There's one Confederate flag, which is not explicitly white supremacist, but is it associated with the white supremacy? Certainly is associated. That certainly could be, is certainly a valid interpretation of what that represents. Just like from the river to the sea, not explicitly. It could mean a free Palestine, not Palestine, the nation, Palestine, just the now, we've just used it since the Romans. Thanks a lot, Romans, for this area, meaning all people within this range are free, right? If you're assuming good faith, you're assuming good faith about a Confederate flag. It just means that area, literally just means the area of the country that flag represented, just all the people there. Could be certainly good faith. It's totally could be that. Probably isn't. But that's what our brains do. Our brains kind of, and also we do this, we look for danger, right? So you scan the thing, you're like, that's not that dangerous, not that dangerous, only somewhat dangerous. That's the dangerous part. Okay, so they're anti-Semites there. They're there. That's what they said. But I think this is part of the problem on both sides, which is it's all anti-Semitic. And then people are going, it's not anti-Semitic at all. How dare you? And you're like, well, okay, it's a little anti-Semitic. Just the same way, like, was it like impossible that there were any white supremacists there storming the Capitol on January 6th? Don't say that. Don't say it's impossible. Were there some white supremacists there? I mean, certainly could have been. There's a case to say there might have been. So let's not deny reality, right? In your saying this is the thing, like we are righteous, we're on the side of righteousness, and we're purely righteous. You're like, well, okay, you overstepped on the first one, and probably even this definitely on the second one. And likewise on the other side, no, you're villains, and it's all villainous. You're like, okay, well but again, that's just that's human recognition of danger, but it's also human tendency towards sloth or laziness. I don't even think it's simplicity or like lack of nuance. It's just late. You're lazy, and you want to get back to your Netflix show. And I say this from my own, I struggle with this as well. So I just fight it super adamantly in a way that annoys people. Like you don't want to figure things out. Again, I realized this during the lockdown period. Most people don't want to figure anything out, and they don't actually want to know how the sausage is getting made. They just want someone to tell them what to do in a way that like is copacetic enough for them and everyone to be okay. Again, safety. I want my family to be okay. I want to be okay. I want my friends to be okay. I don't care. Again, this is why I don't think we're going to be very good at resisting authoritarianism as a culture, because we actually would. I think most people would really like it. They might not say it out loud, but I think 70 to 80% of our population in the United States would be totally fine with authoritarianism. As long as they were like, it's kind of our tribe doing it, then it's going to be fine. And then it's way less decisions for me to make. It's just way less thinking for me to do. And that's what I see happening here, as opposed to be like, okay, every single sign that's up there, even ones with the Palestinian flag, you could have conversations about. You know what I mean? You're like, well, what is a flag? Is that a real flag? Is it even a real nation? It was a name invented by blah, blah, blah. Is it a good nation? Is it a bad? Is it like the Iran flag where you're like, Iran treats its people pretty effed up and it's a Islamofascist regime, which I'm sure some people love because they don't have to think about anything. There's so many less things you have to think about, right? Whereas in the US, we do have this problem of like, since we're somewhat resistant to authoritarianism, we all feel like we all need to have at least a somewhat informed perspective, or at least an adamant perspective about flipping everything, because we are supposed to be very functional portions of the collective. We can't be unconscious. We're not allowed. Now, some people allow themselves, but in public popular culture, we have to be conscious parts of the collective consciousness. We can't just rely on the fact that the collective is going to be conscious. You know what I mean? And that's a lot of demand, I think.
It is. It is. I mean, and what, maybe half the people vote.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, we can have a whole episode about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I've chosen this. We both chosen creator routes. Me largely as an entrepreneur and other things, and that's exhausted me. I caught up with other business leader the other day, and just friendly, just walking on the Chicago Riverwalk.
Pretty
little plug for that. Maybe they'll sponsor us someday. Give yourself a treat, walk along the Chicago River. Anywho, he was saying, how long did you have your first business? I said 14 years. And he's like, wow, they should measure that like dog years, like agency owner years, or whatever, like those who are trying to build something, anything.
Yeah.
And it amplifies, yes, I think, when you have more responsibility and more people, more decisions to make, et cetera, et cetera. So I in some way agree with what you're saying, just about, it could lead in so many directions. Like you could make an anti-capitalist argument, like, oh, we're all exhausted because people have to have 3 jobs, and look at how much harder it is for a middle class family to even make enough money these days, and whatever. And I think there's truth in all of that. And it's interesting. It even relates to, I think it was our last episode, right, where we were kind of analyzing the fall of the empire, and like just an increase in entertainment.
Yeah.
Seems to be one of the clearest examples.
Yeah, I see plenty of unhoused people watching entertainment on their phones. I have a friend whose brother is in prison, and he's like, oh yeah, we were talking about like House of Dragons or whatever. He has like a tablet in prison, and he watches streaming. And so in some ways his mind is at, I was like, so prisoners who are, talk about low on the social totem pole, socioeconomic totem pole, or the unhoused, again, low on the totem pole, spending a phenomenal amount of time entertaining themselves on streaming.
I'm offended by your reference of totem pole, but we'll deal with that on another episode.
Yeah, totem poles are so cool. Oh man, I have a severe affection for totem poles. Have you ever seen the one at Field Museum? Impressive.
Oh yeah.
It's awesome. I like totem poles.
We murdered many people to have that
together. I went, gosh, you wouldn't believe how people were so clingy about their stuff.
Did you? One thing I wanted to tag. Did you ever see Muhammad Ali's 10,000 Snakes video? It's pretty fascinating. I'll send you it. It's short, but it's related. He's talking about racism, and he's just talking about, because I think he's responding to like something like, well, what about the good white people? And and he's just like, well, if it's almost like a snakes on the plane thing. He's like, if there's 10,000 snakes coming down the hallway, it's immediately like, whoa, I gotta take a second to process that.
I know, that's a visual.
And he's like, 1,000 of them aren't going to bite you, but 9,000 are.
Yeah.
Are you going to shut the door or not?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And so if you look at that sort of simplistic, just like if we're in imminent danger center, that makes Israel's whole position make a ton of sense. We don't know how many snakes are going to try to shoot us, blow us up, blah, blah, blah. So we're shutting the door on any Palestine, especially whatever in Gaza. You just elected people whose job was to kill all the Jews, whose stated goal was to kill all the Jews with the helps of rocks, sentient rocks and trees. We're definitely going to shut that door. We're shutting that door. We're barely letting any snakes through. Might be innocent snakes. And this is the same thing too. What if you have to try to go kill those snakes? This is like Muhammad Ali's thing is like, what do you do when you're like, these are poisonous snakes who specific design is to kill me? Not just like if I step on them, but their whole design, they're like man-hunting snakes. How do you kill all those snakes? A whole bunch of snakes. We're watching how it happens. That means you kill a bunch of innocent snakes. While you go blow snakes up, you're killing tons of snakes, man. And I say this, I know some people like you're comparing Palestinians to snakes. I'm comparing all human beings to snakes in this metaphor. Every human being is a snake. Okay. We can all be
Just ripping on
snakes.
the Muhammad Ali thing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just taking that. I was like, but then likewise for people at the protests or Charlottesville or whatever, or January 6th, whatever, same, over and over again. Legitimate concerns are ignored because of the potential dangerous snakes. And you're like, I don't know, it's all bad. We got anyone associated with that. And that's my part of my concern is that people won't learn the lesson out of this. But everyone involved in these Gaza protests has to understand, I'm saying this now for y'all's benefit. You have to understand just like to certain sectors of society who are less thinking, and I would just say lazy in their thinking, anyone who was there on January 6th is a white supremacist. Doesn't matter if you went to the Capitol or you didn't. That's how certain people think about anyone who attended the event on January 6th. Anybody who was involved in these Gaza protests, you're going to be associated with anti-Semites because they're there. So anyone's job is for any continual thing is to excise it. Take it out like cancer that can be removed by surgery, which means you might have to lose some proper function, but you have to cut out those elements. And some of those are easy for me, where it's like, again, like there's a pro-Hamas, meaning this is necessary resistance. There's that sort of attitude. I was like, dude, you gotta get rid of that. You gotta get rid of that. It was like this, because again, how you keep kill all these people, like that's like being pro KKK. It's their stated goal that they are here to kill all the Jews. And that's who is the government of Palestine. So that would be like if Israel's constitution was like, we're going to kill all the Arabs. And then even if they didn't do it all the time, you'd be like, oh, okay, you should disassociate. If they voted for the party that ran on kill all Arabs, that's who Israel is then when they're run by that. That's like functionally, because same with us too, right? If we elected a president who was like kill all Chinese, and then when we went to war, anyone who voted for that guy, you picked when we went to war with China and started killing all the Chinese people, you did it. You're as culpable as anyone. Anyone who continues to live here and not protest it, you're culpable, right? So this is the stuff we're all caught in. So that's what I want to see. And with any of these movements, same things with the anti-lockdown movements, just BLM, whatever. Like if it's continual, then one of the primary jobs, and it sucks because you want to actually make positive movement, but you have to slice off certain portions of the premise. But it's a decentralized movement. So the sad thing is, I don't think it's ever going to happen. That's what it makes me super sad.
I don't know. I've distanced myself and I've tried to position myself differently than even the pro-Palestinian folks who kind of just stopped ever saying anything about the Hamas attack on October 7th.
Yeah.
And part of that's just honestly strategic. Like I feel like referencing both is going to sort of leave more doors open to actually have a real conversation.
Yeah.
Even though, of course, even the last 7 months is a limited slice of history, but here we are living in it still, so that seems relevant.
Yeah.
But even in our intro today, you were like, and it's not just October 7th, right? It's ongoing.
Yeah. No, it's months and months. This is fighting. We're just a war is being fought. A war is being fought, and I think the anti-Semitism thing comes from the people are like on Palestine's side in a war that is mutual. It's a mutual war. So that's the part that seems, I think that this is the thing. And this is the part I was like, you can cut out the cancer part. That's not that hard. How do you cut out that part of it? That's the hardest part. And I don't know how people are handling it on the ground in terms of why are you on one person's side in a mutual war? Like the Ukraine and Russia invaded. So in that case, that's the equivalent to like Palestine invading Israel. And then the war started. But it's definitely a mutual war, and Russia was definitely goaded into it. Now, were they in the right to start that war? I don't think so. Was Palestine in the right to start this war? I don't think so. But it's mutual combat at this point. So to me, it's strange to pick a side from this far across the world. And I think that's the thing that people keep getting stuck on is like, well, why did you pick Why did you pick the Arab Muslim side in a place where Arab Muslims are the majority in that region of the world? Like, why did you pick the majority? And how does that not seem anti-Semitic as it's Arab Muslims fighting the only Jewish nation surrounded by Arab Muslims. So you're fighting, this is very similar to a whole bunch of white colonies attacking the killing the Native Americans. And you're like, why are you siding with the colonists? Listen, there's reasons to side with the colonists. I'm not saying that there aren't reasons, but it's a for people who don't like to think too much, that's a real big basic question that needs to be answered in order to like help the framing. And I see but this is the hard thing. Like, I feel like no one's talking to each other. People are just kind of like yelling.
Oh, no, not at all.
Like, or I posted a thing on my Instagram that got like 11,000 things of this woman just screaming shame, just screaming shame, shame, shame over and over again. I thought it was hilarious. It's literally just
to meme it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, meme it. Let's just meme it. This is funny. I was like, we have to have some fun with this or else we're going to lose our minds. And contextually, she was just screaming at one person holding an Israel flag, standing there with an Israel flag, one person. I don't know what that person said, so I don't know what she was shaming. But contextually, it's just one person screaming shame at someone holding Israel flag. So I was like, and I actually, in some ways, I was like, this is probably a pretty good sense of like the discourse in general. And not just from protesters. This is the same thing, people against the protesters being like, shame on you, you're disgusting. It was like, that's where we're at. But you were there with the people. So like, why don't they want you to take photos?
Well, and I know this kind of ruffles with you, but it's the doxing thing, just protecting people's anonymity.
Should people be able to protest anonymously? That's my question. Is that appropriate? Is that a funny disservice? I don't know.
I guess I default to just sort of, I want to respect the rules that have been set up here, which was hilarious. It was the first day, so like they invented all the rules that day. I took a picture of them.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay. I think weirdly, because it was in the quad and DePaul is kind of a whatever, closed off campus. It's in the middle of Chicago, but it's kind of closed off.
Oh, it's totally it's you can drive by it and never know.
Yeah. It's got like, it seems like it's over there. I think it felt different. I mean, most of the protests I go to are in public streets, and that somehow that had a different feel to it for some reason.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, of course, after he said that, I noticed at least 3 or 4 people live streaming because I was there for a little while, and then they started chanting and doing the megaphone kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it was very impassioned and I don't know. I don't mean to pass judgment, but just reasonable and understandable. And I was like, okay, yeah, you're stating what you believe.
I'm assuming that's the case too.
And I will admit this, which I did not post on Instagram. So part of my wording on Instagram was like, I attended this very peaceful protest because I perceive the protests are being just broadly cast as these, violent, horrific things.
Yes.
And I'm like, let's at least just come back to reality here that these students are camping out. And maybe that's against the school policy, but otherwise, like, seriously, they're not just like going around like, destroying everything. That said, when people get impassioned, things come out. And so later on in the megaphone part, I'm sure I'm paraphrasing, but I'm pretty sure they started saying things like, fuck the Zionists.
Yeah.
And not kill the Zionists, but you're only like a couple of shades away probably at that point.
Yeah. It wasn't, it didn't mean make sweet love too.
So it's like, and I'm there in solidarity. I'm there in observation. I'm there as a old fogey white dude at this point, probably the optics of it. But it's like, I did notice that.
Yeah.
And I chose not to report on that part.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. It was, and then I was curious. So people have already probably made this joke before because it's kind of a easy underhanded pitch over the plate. So the encampments are illegal settlements. Are they illegal settlements intended to, that's like an obvious, exactly what they are. Are they intended to simulate what like Israel did or what the Arabs did? or both? Like, is it intent to go, how do you like it when people occupy your land, which is something that could be said on either side, meaning what are all these Arab Muslims doing in Jewish land for 1,000 years? Or what about these recent uh, Jewish interlopers coming back to this land where you were occupied? Like you're like occupying the West Bank, where you just literally like put a house there where there's never been a house before. And you're like, this is our house. And we're going to put a wall around our house. And listen, people behind those walls are eating falafel, right? Eating whatever, baklava. So they're like, what do you mean? We're eating cookies. Like there's nothing bad here. Meanwhile, outside, you're like, that's been a field. That was like a community park for flipping for 70 years. What do you mean? You can't put houses there, right? It happens in gentrifying neighborhoods, right? This is like violent gentrification happening, certainly in the West Bank. It's not quite related to Gaza, but it's at least adjacent. You know what I'm talking about. So
Yep.
these encampments are taking public place and going, no, this is our house now. I live here now. So it's defiantly a settler colonial imitation. But my question is, and no one's, I feel like not enough people are talking about this. I'm sure this joke has been made, but that's really my first question. Maybe I just need to go to an encampment and be like, who are you simulating? Like or are you just trying to provoke us into thinking about that in terms of like what happens when someone takes land that you thought was for everyone or thought was yours?
Yeah, one thing I appreciate about our conversations about this is, I understand more about the colonial argument, and people, activists, too often
Yeah.
over rely on the idea that Israel is purely a colonial state and Palestine never has been. And we've
Right.
talked about that. We know that
Oh, yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
limited perspective of history.
Yeah, it's just wrong. It's a lie. It's just a lie. They're lying to you. So that's what that is Jews. And if Jews say that like Palestinians aren't like having no indigenous connection to this land, that's also, that would be a lie. That person would be lying to you.
Yeah. Now that
Yeah.
said, I mean, I think part of my pro-Palestinian piece is our involvement. I mean, whether it's my British ancestors or the US,
Yeah.
like the displacement that happened, like you said, we
Yeah.
call it violent gentrification in
It
1940.
was.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, here's a land on a map. Yeah, fuck it. Let's just
Yeah.
make it happen. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's horrific. And then we could go back further. And anyway, I don't mean to get the whole timeline back up. But so I get the colonial argument from the like limited time perspective, but
Yeah.
not from the longer time perspective. At the end of the day, I just don't think it's a particularly useful argument. And I think
Yeah.
it's over associating with other colonial arguments here in the US, some of which are legit, some of which aren't. Like I
Yeah.
think you
Yeah.
said the Mount Rushmore thing.
Yeah. Wasn't that fascinating?
I was like, oh my God, no. Like I've often thought of Mount Rushmore as the most egregious, obvious example of white
Yeah.
settler colonialism. Let's take a sacred mountain and blast 4 white dudes into it. And it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, actually, guess how many times that had changed hands, with all these other tribes.
Yeah. It's been colonized. I mean, in terms of what colonialism functionally is, of outsiders coming and taking that land over and using it for their own. It's happened, I don't know, like 9 times that we know in history and stuff. So listen, not to support that is that's amazing and great, but that is how human beings function, or how
Well,
how nations function. But that's really the problem, right? Is like, why do we? I think that's the deeper problem that doesn't want to be addressed, because it's an existential religious problem, and
I
people
think
are
that's what
like,
you and I are interested in. What is it about
yeah,
human nature
yeah,
that keeps repeating these patterns, and
yeah,
how are we limiting our observation of that human nature
yeah, yeah,
by narrowing the scope of history, to one group of which I'm not denying that European colonial ancestors of mine were oppressors. Like there's no denying that.
yeah.
And yet it's like, well, can we zoom out a little and see where that pattern has existed, where it continues to manifest? Because otherwise I have no confidence whatsoever we're not just going to repeat it in other ways.
Yeah, just different people, just different faces. Yeah.
So back to your question, are
Yeah.
the encampments actually trying to mimic? I doubt it. I think hopefully, maybe if you met the guy I talked to, he was willing to have a good conversation about it. Somebody might be willing to have a philosophical conversation about it. My guess is it's less, I don't know, less sophisticated than that. It's really just, hey, we want to be loud. We want to, now it's a movement, which is kind of cool just in its own right, in terms of, wow, people standing up for what they believe and kind of watching the virus grow in a way, which
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
is powerful and fascinating. I think it's purely based on, oh, how can we disrupt the campus enough to get the attention of the authorities to do something?
To at least, yeah.
I need to look more into it, but our alma mater, Northwestern, is a pretty fascinating example because they did reach a compromise. I made
Yeah.
it to the encampment last weekend after it was basically shut down.
Oh, okay.
So that uh, I mean, there was still, it was weird. I mean, it looked like the aftermath of an encampment.
Like Dillo Day.
Yeah, kind of. But actually, it's funny you say that because I guess DePaul has a music fest, and one of their successes was shutting down this music festival
Oh,
uh, that usually takes
that's
place
see,
at
that's
DePaul.
such a bad look. Don't do it. See, that's and listen, maybe this is a student. No, even if I was a student, I would even be more like this. That's such a bad look, right? Because October 7th disrupted a music festival and they killed a whole bunch of people on it. So the last thing you want to do if you're trying to say like pro-Palestine is to disrupt a music festival. Like that's ah. This is hilarious to me though. But this is the problem. This is an even different problem, Andy. Doers and thinkers, how rarely people are both, you know? And this is the problem with so many activists, or the good thing and bad thing about activist movements is like they do things that are so counterproductive. But hey, and this is true, I don't even mean this sarcastically. Hey, at least they're doing something. I mean that
Yeah.
genuinely. You know what I mean? They have a conviction. Oh, but wait, you've talked to people, and then I know you got to get out of here. I don't know what your out is, but I had these questions. So you were saying this spread like I have watched this movement spread. And as much as this movement is an anti-war movement, I'm like, heck yeah. The fact that it's calling for a ceasefire suggests it's not necessarily an anti-war movement. Um, that part of it, in terms of that part of the demand, but divesting from like military interests by colleges, I'm pretty much two thumbs up on that. I know military is important, but I don't like that interplay, and I don't think it's healthy. A
Yeah.
ceasefire is going to benefit the losing side in a war. So then it's very one-sided. So I don't like the ceasefire personally. This is just, I think that's a you're taking a side at that point. Whereas I was like, why don't you let people settle it the way they've settled it forever, even if it's a terrible way? I think it's awful, but this is how every conflict in that area gets solved always. So I don't I,
Yeah.
I don't know that there's any option. Diplomacy seems to be rejected by one side or the other throughout history over and over again. And I'm not keeping score on who's rejected diplomacy, but both sides have rejected diplomacy at various stages. So Palestine has done it, Israel has done it, or whatever. The Arabs have done it, and the Jews have done it. What has made this movement catch on? And I still can't figure that out. And I was like, colonialism is one of the things, right? So saying this is like an anti-colonialist, that's the catch, the reason that can't be true because both of these are colonial powers. These are both the products of colonialism, right? One of Islamic colonialism for way, way longer than the Jews have quote unquote colonized, right? So that's a way again, just in terms of history, like the Palestinians are more the result of a colonial imposition than the Jews are. But you can't say that the Jews aren't a colonial imposition because they specifically said it when they were starting to do it. They're like, we're going to take the colonial model to go back and retake our land, right? So they're both colonizers. There's no colonizer colonized really in this section. Or if there is, Jews are more the marginalized or oppressed just by virtue of the entire region being dominantly Arab and dominantly still Muslim. So they're this weird little standout of like, hey, we weren't colonized yet, even though they came in to colonize the area. So both colonizers, so it can't be colonialism. It can't be the dead kids thing, because that a lot of people bring that up. Because again, the same people, at least anecdotally, but I could be wrong about this, don't really seem to care about like dead kids here. So then it's not the dead kids problem. It's not the apartheid systems because the kids didn't protest like this across the nation when a vaccine apartheid system was set up on their own campuses where kids couldn't come to class anymore unless they took the pharmaceuticals by the companies, the profit companies who fund their politicians. So just again, from an adversarial, like the government's like effing up and they're colluding with corporate interests, right? And it can't be about marginalized people because again, in context over there, Jews are marginalized people, and here, Jews are marginalized people. I think you can make the claim that Palestinians are marginalized people as well. So it's both marginal. They're both colonial. Dead kids, apartheid aren't really appropriate. And apartheid has nothing really to do with Gaza anyway. It would really be a broader Palestinian thing. That would be like I would say that's a West Bank issue more than anything else, and even a little bit in Israel. So I was like, what is it? Like, this is why I think a lot of people keep defaulting to this is an Israel problem. This is a Jewish problem because I can't figure it out. So, and I've thought about it way more than lazy people have. Like, what made this such a popular? Is it just about the moment, or is there something I'm missing that created this as like, how did this become such a big movement? I still don't understand it.
I think that is a fascinating question, perhaps to hold for another time. I do need to run.
Okay.
I don't know the answer. I'm even though there's a lot of me that sort of identifies with the movement, I also am perplexed, and look,
Yeah.
I only kind of became aware of this a year before this started.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm pretty new to it also, but at the same time, it's like even I'm shocked. Like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
So I think there's something there to continue exploring for sure.
Yeah. Right on.
In the meantime, is this Charlottesville 2.0? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think I know enough about Charlottesville. But.
Yeah. I'm going to say yes, but I'm also going to say it's also January 6th 2.0, and it's BLM 2.0, and it's it's the trucker convoy 2.0. It's the attempt to like trot, one Nazi flag at an event that people still contend was a government operative because they saw him being photographed by a government photographer in Canada. You're like, okay, this is a government plant. Now, I don't think the anti-Semites are all government plants in this movement. But is it? It absolutely is. But is Charlottesville Charlottesville? No. Thumbs down.
All right. Love you.
Love you, Andy.
Bye.
Have a beautiful day.
You
Bye.
too.